Yesterday, the largest open AI model ever built stopped being a promise and became a file. 1.5 terabytes, 96 pieces, free to download. And within hours, 3 things happened that nobody had on the card. 6 different companies started selling access, and every single one landed on exactly the same price, to the cent. More people clicked the like button than actually downloaded it. And when people opened the license, it was not Apache. It was not MIT. It was something else entirely, with a $20 million trigger hiding in Clause 2. This is the third round of our Kimi K3 coverage, and it is the first one where we can check everything ourselves. Let us start with what actually landed. On July 27th, Moonshot AI published the full weights of Kimi K3 on Hugging Face and the technical report on GitHub. We pulled the repository metadata directly, 96 SafeTensor shards, 1.56 terabytes in total, last modified at 1629 UTC. The Hacker News thread crossed 1,100 points and 440 comments, making it one of the largest AI discussions of the year. Our last episode ended by saying, watch July 27th, because that is when claims become checkable. That day arrived. So let us check them. And the first thing that failed the check was the word everyone had been using. Almost every piece of coverage, including plenty that quoted a specific license, said the weights would arrive under Apache 2.0 or MIT. They did not. The file sitting in the repository is titled, quote, Kimi K3 license. Hugging Face itself tags the model with license : other. It reads like MIT for the first paragraph, and then 2 extra conditions arrive that MIT has never had. That distinction is not pedantic. It changes who can build a business on this model. The other surprise was how much came with it. Alongside the weights, Moonshot pushed out the technical report, an expert parallel communication library called MoonEP, a kernel library called FlashKDA, a large-scale agent environment platform, and a GPU compiler project called Mini Triton. Support landed the same day in VLLM, SGLang, Transformers, and Alma, and paid endpoints appeared on Based-In, Fireworks, Nebius, DigitalOcean, Together, and Modal. Whatever you think of the license, that is the fastest ecosystem stand-up any open model has ever had. 11 days from launch to a working global supply chain. Now the part that only becomes possible after a release like this, reading the config file. Not a press release, not a benchmark table, the actual JSON that defines the model. 93 layers, 896 experts, of which 16 route per token, plus 2 shared experts that always fire. Hidden size, 7,168. Vocabulary of 163,840 tokens. Maximum position embeddings of exactly 1,048,576. The advertised million token context is not marketing rounding. It is literally in the file. And here is a correction to the number most people were quoting, including us. Before the release, the widely repeated estimate was that K3 activates roughly 50 billion parameters per token. Moonshot's own model card now says 104 billion. That is double. And it is not a trivia point. Active parameters are what you actually pay for on every single token, in compute and in memory bandwidth. So the model is roughly twice as expensive to serve per token as the pre-release consensus assumed. Hold on to that, because it explains something strange in the price data. The engineering effort to serve it is genuinely brutal, and VLLM wrote it up in public. Their minimum viable configuration is one node of 8B300 accelerators or 16B200S. Because the model mixes normal attention layers with Kimi delta attention layers, standard prefix caching simply does not work. Full attention layers store per token key value pairs, while the delta layers carry recurrent state. They had to build a hybrid cache manager. One metadata step alone went from 870 microseconds down to 34 after kernel fusion. That is a 96% cut on a single helper function. But the strangest artifact in this release is Mini Triton. It is a working GPU compiler, a Python embedded tile language on the front end, MLIR passes in the middle, PTX coming out the back, plus an eager tensor library, AutoGrad, benchmarks, and documentation. Moonshot's claim, written into the repository, is that the entire stack was designed, implemented, measured, and written by K3 itself. They also flagged the limits honestly, verified on one GPU generation, no convolution operators, explicitly not a product. But unlike a benchmark score, this one you can clone and compile yourself. Now the test that the whole open weights argument rests on. The theory says, publish the weights, providers compete, the price collapses. So we pulled the live provider list from OpenRouter today. 6 endpoints are serving Kimi K3, Moonshot itself, based in DigitalOcean, Nebius, Fireworks, and Together. Every single one is priced at $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output. Not close. Identical. On day one, in a market with 6 sellers and no exclusivity, the price did not move by a single cent. And that price only looks normal until you put it next to the neighbors. On the same platform right now, GLM 5.2 runs about 76 cents in and $2.40 out. DeepSeek V4 Pro is 44 cents in, 87 cents out. Moonshot's own previous model, K2.6, is 65 cents in and $2.72 out. So Kimi K3 costs roughly 4 times GLM on input and 6 times on output, and roughly 17 times DeepSeek V4 Pro on output. The largest open Chinese model is also, by a distance, the most expensive one. There is also a quality footnote that the identical price tags hide. Those 6 endpoints are not selling the same thing. Moonshot serves it at int4. Based-in serves FP8. Nebius serves FP4 and lists a context window of 8,000 tokens, not 1 million. 3 of the 6 report their quantization as unknown. So you can pay the same headline price at 6 different shops and receive 6 measurably different models. When a number is the same everywhere, that is usually the moment to ask what is underneath it. Then there is the download counter, which tells its own story. As of our check, the Hugging Face page shows 5,474 likes and 2,850 downloads. Read that again. Nearly twice as many people pressed the like button as pulled the files. That is not apathy. It is physics. 1.56 terabytes is not a casual click, and top comments on Hacker News were asking whether Hugging Face even has the bandwidth and whether someone would please start a torrent. Freely available and practically available are 2 different words. And on markets, strictly for the record, with 0 investment advice. We pulled the closes ourselves. Between July 24th and July 27th, the session spanning the weights release, NVIDIA went from $206.84 to $197.52, down about 4.5%. AMD fell from $521.95 to $489.87, down about 6%. The S&P 500 was essentially flat, moving from 7411 to 7414. Chips moved, the index did not. We are reporting that as a coincidence in time, not a cause. So where does it actually sit? On version 4.1 of the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, a composite of 9 evaluations. Kimi K3 scores 57. Claude Fable 5 is at 60. GPT 5.6 Sol is at 59. Claude Opus 4.8 is at 56. So K3 is third, 1 point above Opus, 3 points off the leader. And the trajectory is the part worth staring at. Moonshot's own K2.6 scored 44 on the same index. 13 points in roughly 3 months is the steepest climb any open-weight family has managed this year. But run the cost comparison and you get 2 contradictory answers, which is exactly why this story keeps getting told badly. By Artificial Analysis's own accounting, completing their full index costs about 94 cents with K3 versus $1.80 for Opus 4.8 and $2.75 for Fable 5. So against Western frontier models, K3 is roughly half to a third of the price. But against its Chinese neighbors, It is 4 to 6 times more expensive. Cheap and expensive at the same time, depending entirely on which shelf you are comparing it to. And here is the mechanism that connects the two halves. When GLM 5.2 opened up, anyone could host it, providers piled in, and community trackers watched the price slide roughly 45% in about 6 weeks. That is the open weights flywheel working as advertised. K3 has 2 brakes on that flywheel. One is physical. You need most of $1 million rack before you can serve a single token. The other is legal, and it is written into the license. Which brings us to the clause that quietly reshapes this entire story. Here is the license in plain English. Read directly from the file. Clause 2. If you run a model-as-a-service business and your revenue plus your affiliates crosses $20 million over any rolling 12 months, you must sign a separate agreement with Moonshot AI before any commercial use. Clause 3. If your product has more than 100 million monthly active users or more than $20 million in monthly revenue, the words Kimi K3 must be displayed prominently in your interface. Clause 4 exempts purely internal use and used through Moonshot's own certified partners. Now put that against the story that started this whole series. The reported plan was Microsoft evaluating a swap of Kimi K3 into Copilot to save up to $600 million a year. Read the clauses against that. An assistant with capabilities embedded in features looks like it falls inside Clause 2's carve-out. But Copilot is far past 100 million monthly users. So Clause 3 would require Microsoft to print the words Kimi K3 on its own product screen. And if Azure resold K3 as an API, that is model as a service, which means signing an agreement with a Beijing lab. That is our reading of the text. Moonshot has not commented on any specific company, which forces a harder question about the word open. The open source initiative's definition for AI asks for the training code and enough detail about the data to reconstruct the system. K3 ships neither. So this is an open weight release with commercial gates, not open source. And the developer who noticed it first pointed out that Moonshot's 2025 models were clean MIT. The modified term started in January with K2 thinking. There is even an unresolved legal wrinkle raised in the thread, whether model weights, produced by an optimization process rather than a human author, are copyrightable in the United States at all. Untested in court. But it means the strength of this license is itself an open question. For things to watch. First, and this is the twist almost nobody saw coming, China may restrict this itself. According to Financial Times reporting on July 21st, the Ministry of Commerce and the planning agency NDRC have been consulting on export controls for AI models, including whether foreign users may download open weights, with filing requirements for weaker models, security reviews for stronger ones, and a possible ban on public release for the most capable. Nothing is final. But note the symmetry. Washington debating whether to ban downloading it. Beijing debating whether to allow publishing it. Second, the quantization race. Unsloth already had a K3 repository up on July 27th with 122 files. The prize is a version that fits on one affordable node without wrecking quality, and that is what would actually democratize this model, not the license, not the press release. Third, watch whether any provider breaks the 3 and 15 floor. The moment one does, we find out in public whether that license clause has teeth. And fourth, the deepest one, independent replication. Because everything argued about for 11 days is now checkable. The joint UK and US Safety Institute cyber numbers we covered last time, reproducible. The benchmark scores, reproducible. And the question that has hung over this release since a White House official raised it. The technical report does describe multi-teacher on-policy distillation and a self-evolving knowledge graph for generating training tasks, but it does not name the teachers. That ambiguity is the whole fight. With weights in public, researchers can finally probe it instead of arguing about it. That is the real gift of a release like this, whatever the license says. So that is your AI Daily Deep Dive. Round 1 was the hype. Round 2 was the audit. and round 3 is the receipt. The biggest open model on Earth is genuinely here, genuinely strong, and genuinely constrained by 1.5 terabytes of physics, by a price floor 6 sellers agreed on without blinking, and by 2 clauses of a license that most of the coverage never opened. The thing that changed this week is not the capability. It is that we can finally check. If you want the next round when it lands, subscribe. We only report what we can verify, and we do not give investment advice. See you tomorrow.